Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Film School this July 29th, 2020. My name's Adam and today I'm joined by the one and only film guru himself, Josh. How you doing, Josh?
Good, thanks, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. We also have the final girl and the scary movie maiden, Emily Pratt. What's cracking, Emily?
Not a lot, Adam.
Fair enough. And finally, we have Chris Birchie, the rom-com expert. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well, thank you.
That's good. How's everyone's week been so far?
Yeah, can't complain.
Yeah, wearing masks has been interesting, but other than that, we can't complain.
Yep, I got a very topical film that I've watched this week for that. You can follow us on Letterboxd. Our usernames are JLuke for Josh, Emily Pratt for Emily, Chris Birchie for Chris, and I'm King Frogby, which I regret immensely. So, I guess let's start off the first topic of the show with what we've been watching. Take it away, Josh.
So, inspired by Chris's Mean Girls pick last week, I decided to rewatch my favourite movie of the sort of genre, which was Clueless. Made in 1995, stars Alicia Silverstone. Classic 90s flick. It's what I didn't know is, much like how 10 Things I Hate About You is based off Taming the Shrew by Shakespeare, this is based off the 1815 novel Emma by Jane Austen. So I've seen this movie about 10, 15 times in my life, and I had no idea about that.
So I've never seen Clueless. Like, what is it about?
So Clueless follows a valley girl in the 90s, and she's the most popular girl in school. And she's always looking for ways to use her popularity to help out other people. And someone new comes to the school who is sort of a burnout and everything, played by Brittany Murphy. Rest in peace, Brittany Murphy. And the main character, Cher, decides it's her job to clean this girl up and make her one of the more popular girls in school. And it sort of backfires and she becomes more popular than Cher, and shenanigans ensue, and it's just a great time. Actually, I saw a review on Letterboxd by user Katie that said it's better than literally 100% of Academy Award Best Picture winners to date. I don't know if I go that far, but I had a great time.
Oh, okay. I'm just looking at the cast list now, and it has like Paul Rudd and Donald Faison. No, okay. Like I've heard very good things about it. It's never crossed my mind.
This was my sister's favourite movie when I was a kid, so I'd watched it so many times before I was 10. So I probably had no idea what it was about, but it was just so cool. And it is such a 90s nostalgia trip. I feel like all 90s nostalgia is rooted in this movie.
I like the synopsis is sex, clothes, popularity. Is there a problem? Sweet. All right, cool. Might check it out. That sounds pretty good to me. All right, Em, what have you been watching this week?
A movie I watched over the weekend was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I actually watched it on a Sunday night, and if it weren't for the current coronavirus restrictions in Victoria, I reckon I would have taken a sickie on Monday because it inspired me. But yeah, basically, it's a John Hughes movie from the 80s, 1986. We have Matthew Broderick, who is the voice of the Lion King, or voice of Simba in The Lion King, which I never knew until after I watched this movie. So That's I found that really interesting. But anyway, so he stars as Ferris Bueller, who is this teenage boy he's a bit of an asshole, but he's quite lovable at the same time. He basically chucks the ultimate sickie. So we basically, follow him around as he kind of spends the day trying to evade his school principal and his parents while he's out gallivanting around the town of Chicago instead of being homesick in bed like they think he should be. And he also gets his friend and girlfriend to come along for the ride as well. So, it's just like a nice light-hearted comedy. It was interesting reading up a little bit about this afterwards, because one of the things that I did quite like, but I also got a little bit frustrated by at times, was that he always he somehow has just his whole day figured out, and he can always get his way out of these situations that he really shouldn't be able to find a way out of. And so it was interesting. I was reading this theory that some people are saying he might actually be in a Groundhog Day type scenario, where he's actually
Yeah.
like relived that day before for like, you know, countless times, and that's how he kind of knows how to get out of all of these situations. So
that's
I don't
a-
know. I feel
Yeah, so like all I know, like I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's like one of my
Mm.
favorite films as well. Like it had like it was one of the first movies to ever break the fourth wall, where they talk directly at the
Yeah.
camera,
yeah, that was cool.
and it's inspired like countless like similar cameos, including like Deadpool. The final credit scene has Deadpool in a towel talking to the camera in the same way Matthew Broderick does. There's
that's
also
cool.
a scene in Spider-Man Homecoming where they're running through the back gardens, and it's like literally play for play. Yeah, I can't recommend that movie enough.
Can I just say though, Ferris is such a prick.
But he's still somehow likable in my like. I understand why you wouldn't like him, but for me, I was like, yeah, you're not a very nice kid, but I still like you. I respect that you're, you
He
know,
definitely knows how to get his own way. That's
Yeah.
the main
Would
theme.
you have gone to that much effort to pull a sickie though, Em?
like I don't think I have the energy for it, to be honest. I don't care enough. On that note though too, so yeah, it's one thing going through that
Yeah.
amount of effort to pull a sickie, but can we just talk about also Mr. Rooney, so the school principal, the fact that he literally spends his entire workday trying to catch out this one kid, which is, you know, a bit extreme, I thought, but something else that I recently found out after watching it that kind of makes it all a little bit worse is that he was actually arrested back in 2003, I think, for possessing child pornography, and he was accused of soliciting a 17-year-old boy to pose for nude photos.
Ooh.
So,
As in the
yes.
actor?
Yeah, the actor. Yeah, what's his name? Something Jeffries. I was going to say Jim Jeffries, but I feel like that's not right. Hang on.
Whoa, sorry, the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
The teacher, yeah, the guy who plays Mr. Rooney.
Oh, I'm fairly sure you're thinking of the wrong actor. I thought it was the dad of the Ferrari owner. I can't remember Ferris Bueller's best friend.
So yeah, it's Jeffrey Jones who is Mr. Rooney, the principal.
Oh, I thought you meant the economics teacher. I apologize.
Nah.
Okay.
He's the assistant principal, isn't he? So he's the one that's trying to keep truancy at bay.
I was going to say, principals do a lot of work in the John Hughes universe because the principal in the Breakfast Club spends his entire Saturday at detention with kids.
Yeah.
Do you not have someone else to do that?
Just want him to be taken seriously, you know?
So there's a really good podcast called Reunited Together by Josh Gad, where this only came out like a few weeks ago, where he gets together the cast of Ferris Bueller's Day Off again, and talks through the movie, and they reenact lines and discuss like behind the scenes stuff. And that's really worth checking out if you guys are interested in that.
Cool. That sounds interesting. But yeah, anyway, so pretty good movie. Overall, gave it 4 stars because, yeah, it was just a nice, light-hearted comedy.
Sweet. And Chris, what have you been?
Perfect. I'll move on. I watched Sherlock Holmes, so a Guy Ritchie movie. It's the story of, I suppose, an eccentric, very observant, astute, and witty detective. I think most people would know from the books.
Is this the Robert
Downey
Jr.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And his assistant, Dr. Watson. So Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law is Dr. Watson. So in the movie, they investigate a series of deaths that appear to have some form of a dark arts or witchcraft type link. It's also got Rachel McAdams again in the film, same as I was watching last week with Mean Girls. But she's a skilled thief who has some sort of an allure over Sherlock Holmes. But yeah, overall the movie, it's very quirky. There's a lot of random sort of potions and contraptions, I suppose, a little bit like the Harry Potter movies in terms of the potion type thing, or the dark arts. There's lots of it random yet entertaining dialogue, some sort of fight scenes as well. It does have an excellent last 20 minutes. It's probably the part that I like the most, where all the little loose ends are filled in. So I really like the ending of the movie. But it probably could have benefited from being a little bit shorter. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch, and it's definitely very quirky. Would be the way to look at it with Robert Downey Jr.
Are you gonna watch the subsequent like Sherlock Holmes 2?
I think I have seen it, but I'd need to rewatch it. It was quite a few years ago I watched it, I think, but I don't really remember it, and I don't even know who was in it, to be honest. So I'll watch it at some stage, but I won't. I'm not going to jump out to watch it after seeing the first one.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I just looked it up on Letterboxd, and there's a Sherlock Holmes 3 that has also been announced for 2021, but Guy Ritchie is not in charge. So
Right.
So it's probably going to be even worse then.
But I would say pretty comfortably, yes.
Yep. As most, third movies are.
I'm just trying to think, are there any third movies that like I would warrant as like the best in the series? But any come to mind?
I
Lord of the
like
Rings.
Rocky 3. I haven't seen it in a while, but Rocky 3 was quite good for me. But I don't know if it's the best. But I do need to rewatch it. So that's the only one that comes to mind for me.
Lord of the Rings, easy.
Ooh, that's a good
I've still
point.
never watched a Lord of the Rings movie.
I've got the Blu-ray box set if you want to borrow them at some point once COVID's over.
Have you got a spare year and a half to watch them all?
Yeah.
Well, kind of, to be honest.
Well, yeah. Okay.
The rate things are going.
It's 12 hours worth of cinematic glory. All right, yeah, so this week I watched Contagion, which is probably the most topical film at the moment. And it's actually one of the reasons I ended up doing infection and disease as my major at university.
Aw, that's cute. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a super fantastic movie. It's by Steven Soderbergh as the director, same guy who did Ocean's 11. And what was the other one? Side Effects, Ocean's 12 and 13 as well. So essentially it's a viral outbreak occurs, and it is the CDC and World Health Organization's response to that disease following from initial outbreak right through to, the spread of the epidemic into pandemic, the response and vaccine creation. The approach, I think, like it was cool watching, especially given the current situation with the coronavirus, like what happens once a vaccine is created. And they did sort of like a lottery for birthdays, which I thought was quite interesting because that's I guess a big question about like if we do come out with a vaccine, what's the approach there? But as it stands, Contagion's probably the most scientifically accurate movie I think that exists. It's pretty much all the science is pretty sound. And I even went to like a screening a few years back at Cinema Nova, where they had like an epidemiologist and the head of our vaccine development here in Australia, as well as our epidemic outbreak or disease outbreak team at CSIRO. Also just giving like a panel before and after the movie. Love it. Has Matt Damon, Gwyneth Paltrow, and sort of just, it also has, what's the guy's name? What's Morpheus's name? Lawrence Fishburne, thank you, as the head of the CDC. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep.
Cool.
What else you watched?
I know a few of us here watched Eden Lake the other night, which is a James Watkins horror thriller from 2008. It stars Michael Fassbender in an early role and has a couple of younger actors that I was familiar with. It has Jack O'Connell, who plays Cook in the second generation of Skins cast. And it has Thomas Turgoose, who was in This Is England as the young skinhead Sean. So good to see an appearance from him here. It was a tense horror thriller about a couple who had gone to this lake for the weekend, and the male had a lot of things planned out, but everything sort of goes downhill when they meet a gang of wild youths who sort of turn their weekend into hell, basically.
Yeah. I watched this as well, and it was pretty, I don't know, I feel like it, towards the end, it kind of like ended up losing a little bit of its quality for me maybe. But yeah, on the whole, pretty good movie. I don't have the words to describe it in my brain right now.
It's
Disturbing might be the word.
What was that? Sorry.
Disturbing.
Disturbing. Yeah, it was quite disturbing in terms of I think because in this one you've got the youths that are the evil, I suppose, and it's because it's all kind of realistic. That's kind of what makes it quite
strong nature over nurture message, things like that.
Yeah.
It's very bleak. I will say that should probably be mentioned. For genre fans only, I would say if you're not a horror person, you're not going to enjoy one movie of this movie.
I was about to cut in and say I did not participate in this, and I didn't even get an invite, and honestly, not upset. So
there would have been nothing for you here at all. I like the gore. The gore was very realistic and effective. I always use the word effective, but in movies like this,
it was.
Very. No, I gave it a 3.5. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. All right. So yeah, moving on to the supernatural sort of thriller genre, I'm going to be talking about Carrie, but I'm going to be talking about the Carrie from 2013. Okay, so Carrie is adapted from Stephen King's novel that originally came out in the 60s. Stephen King, let me just say it, one of my all-time favorite authors, and I feel like a lot of his stories have been adapted quite well to film as well, because there's quite a lot of Stephen King movies which I quite enjoy. So Carrie, his first ever novel, was all about this young girl who's quite different, and she's bullied and ridiculed at school by her peers. She also has this mother who's just a religious zealot and is just really intense and awful to her. And she ends up discovering that she has these telekinetic powers, which she actually ends up putting to use after she's humiliated at a school event. Okay, so this was actually first adapted to film back in 1976, so 2 years after the novel came out, and this 1976 version is literally the perfect film. Okay, cannot speak more highly about it. Absolutely incredible. So Brian De Palma, who directed it, absolutely nailed it. Don't have any bad words to say about it at all. So anyway, so that came out, and then for some reason, which I can't quite understand, they've decided 37 years on that for some reason there needs to be a new version of Carrie, even though the perfect Carrie movie already exists, okay? And let me just tell you, this is me trying to be unbiased, but 2013 Carrie is just awful. Okay, I don't have anything positive that I can say about this movie. Even because I was thinking about okay, why might they have actually wanted to do a newer Carrie? And I was like, oh, maybe kind of adapt it to modern times, have a more modern audience. But yeah, they just missed the mark by so much. You literally Carrie from the 70s movie, you feel so much sympathy for from the very beginning, so much so that we actually want the people who are bullying her to die, and we're all okay with that. Whereas Carrie from this movie, we just I personally couldn't have cared less about what happened to her, which is, polar opposite to how I felt watching the first movie. And Josh, I know you share these opinions. Do you have anything you would like to add?
I hated this fucking movie.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if I'd seen this or not before. And about half an hour in, it was so generic and so plain that I still wasn't sure if I'd ever seen it before. I'd figured out by the end that I hadn't, and I figured it out by the fact that if I had have seen this movie before, I would have been so cut and angry I never would have forgot it. I share Emm's exact feelings about Stephen King and about the original Carrie. It is the easiest 5-star film. Sissy Spacek's performance in that original is one of the finest acting performances of all time.
It's incredible.
I have never had so much empathy for a character. With the shocking, shall I say, ending, let's just say I might be on a different side to some people because I love Sissy Spacek in that movie so much. You have the perfect performance to copy, and that's exactly what Chloe Grace Moretz did. It was just, she tried to copy everything Sissy did, but the tone of the film itself was different, so it just seemed out of place. And
it just wasn't done well. It wasn't done well. Yeah.
I gave this movie a half a star, and it did not even
Same.
deserve that.
I
Yep.
agree with everything you guys have both said with it. And I remember when you were saying you were going to watch it again, I was like, no, I'm not watching this again. I think I watched it maybe like 4 years ago or something. But I remember it being that bad. But I still put another review in because I thought I might as well review it so I remember to never watch it again. And the review I put in was, this movie is summed up perfectly by Forky from Toy Story 4. Trash. So that was all I did for my review.
It is so bad.
Yeah.
Like, why do we waste our time?
Yep. That's an hour and a half that I will never be getting back. But anyway.
All right. Well, I watched Snatch as the other movie, so another like a Guy Ritchie double I had. This movie is excellent. So it's not a follow up, but it's kind of a follow up to Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. It's just a great combination of the cast, the banter in there, especially the British banter, and just like Lock, Stock, it's got a ridiculous plot line, and you can kind of just say, does it even have a plot? There's rigged boxing adjudicators or owners, runners. There's jewel robberies, pikey caravans and pikeys, plenty of guns, a random dog, which seems to be a formidable combination in movies at the moment. And just like the movie Lock, Stock, nothing goes to plan ever during it. Yet, by the end of it, it kind of all does come together for a few of the characters. So it's just one of those witty and random comedies that the British sort of humour comes out in, which I love. Again, by pure coincidence, it has Brad Pitt in there. He's an incomprehensible pikey, which was an interesting fact with that is that he loved Lock, Stock so much that he wanted a role in it and asked Guy Ritchie for one. So, Guy Ritchie essentially found a role for him. And initially he was meant to be speaking in an English accent for a different role, but he just couldn't nail it. So they changed up his thing to be an incomprehensible pikey, which fitted quite well. So that was one of the facts there. And the other fact that I noticed from it too was a movie I watched earlier, Shaun of the Dead. The Winchester bar's in there as well. So bringing into the same Winchester bar. That was the scene with the two fake guns. Is that scene? So yeah, I loved it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
Okay, I've never seen it, so I might give that a crack. That sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think Emily and Josh have both watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd highly recommend. It's one that you'll actually like, I think, Adam.
Okay.
Yeah. Loved it. Can't say a bad word about it.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. All right, and finally, I watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Now, this is the first time I've ever watched it. And I guess it's probably inspired by the third film coming out in the next coming few months. But just to give you, I guess, the synopsis. So it's two bro dudes, and they travel to time trying to complete a history project. So they... Like, I guess it's such a weird premise, and they just don't make movies like this anymore. But yeah, so it has Keanu Reeves and what's the other guy's name?
Alex Winter.
Alex Winter. Yeah. So essentially, they need to finish their history project, and they need to pass. Otherwise, they won't be able to start a band and save the world. So they travel through time, and they recruit historical figures to help them with their history project. So they recruit Abraham Lincoln, Alex the Kid, Socrates, Napoleon. Who else is there? It's like
Joan of Arc. Don't forget Joan of Arc.
And yeah, it's essentially just like these two bumbling idiots, just like going through history, trying to get all these historical figures. And I think the whole way through the movie I was just thinking to myself, how does this help them with the project at its core? And they get on stage to do this project for some reason in front of the entire school, and it's like the execution at the end is awful, but it's such a fun movie. Like the whole time I like had like the weirdest smile on my face.
I've got that smile now hearing you talk about it.
Like it's an experience. It's one of like Keanu Reeves's like first movies, and like I didn't think Keanu Reeves had like a lot of dynamic range, but man, does he play a dumbass really well. Yeah, so like highly recommended if you haven't seen it. As I said, the third movie's coming out. I guess it's one of those like you don't have to think too hard going into the movie. It's just
This
really
is one of my favorite movies of all time. This is in my top 4 on Letterboxd.
oh really?
Yeah, I adore this movie. I love how everything dumb in it is completely on purpose. It's so self-aware. The acting is everyone knows exactly how dumb they're supposed to be at the right times. It has so much heart, has a love story. They save the world. What more do you need? And also the sequel rules.
So yeah, so I'm gonna watch that this week. In the lead up to that new movie, and I will say it does my favorite thing. I think in a time travel movie where he's standing there and goes, "Man, it'd be really convenient right now if the keys were behind this sign." And he's like, "This is a reminder to me to put the keys behind this sign." Then he walks over to the sign, picks up the keys. He's like, "Yeah." And then they do it like 3 or 4 more times. And he's like, "Man, it'd be really convenient if something got in the way of my dad." Boom, bucket over his head. And I'm like, in those moments, I'm just like, whoa, they're thinking ahead. It's sensational, and like I can't recommend it enough. And I'm just getting excited thinking about it.
Ever. It is so good. 5 stars from me.
Yeah, so I gave that a 4.5 stars. Yeah. Sorry, you go.
I was gonna say it's funny because like when I'm like, oh, like it's a movie I've heard of, but I don't think I've seen it. But when you described it, I'm like, I feel as if I have a vague memory of like the random historical figures. So
I think we watched it at the same time, Emily. Yeah.
No.
The scene where they're at the
I would
mall
say you're wrong.
is the best.
The scene at the mall where they all just go around and start playing like musical,
Where Beethoven
starts playing the what do you call it? Genghis Khan goes into a sporting goods and starts whacking the shit out of a mannequin.
Movie.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it because the more and more I talk about it, the more and more I think about how great of a time it was. And I'm just excited to watch the next one because the premise is so dumb as well.
They got a new trailer this week, so check that out if you haven't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. So that sort of ends out this segment. I did just really quickly want to touch on the platform, just as a really final one. So the platform, the premise behind it is that there is like a high-rise building with a platform of food that starts at the very top and works its way down through the levels, and you can take as much food from the platform as you want at each of the levels, and it only stands there for a short period of time, and you can't take the food and keep it. So it's sort of like a prison. That's probably the best way to put it, guys.
Yeah.
And
yeah, for sure.
As you can imagine, the higher the number, or the lower down the tower you go, the less amount of food you get. And it's pretty good. Like, I think, like, I'll say it's a good film.
It's good.
Yeah, and I think that the premise is really intriguing, and I think that that's what made me watch it and, like, be really into it the whole time. Like, I will say, though, and because I haven't really talked to anyone who's watched it, and I know you guys have. What did you guys think of the ending? And that's spoilers.
Sucked.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it was disappointing.
So so I guess like just to like fill people in. So the premise is that like people, this guy, the main character, puts it on himself to try and create like an ecosystem where the food from he gets to a really high level 1 month and decides to start rationing out food to try and get to all the levels and find out how many levels there are. And there's cannibalism happening down in the lower levels. And finally, he makes it all the way through to the very bottom. And there's a child, and I didn't understand how the child was...
The message
and the bottom. And I just like... There were so many other ways I felt like they could clear it up. and it just never went anywhere. Anyways, that's my entire thoughts on
The
that.
more we talk about it, the more it just sounds like a really bad version of Snowpiercer.
Yes. Yep.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. I guess like we always have like a recurring segment in the podcast where we talk about the worst movie that we watched during the week. Does anyone have any like terrible movies? I know we watched more than that.
We definitely spoke about the worst movie I watched this week, which was the Carrie remake.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't think I can get more angry than that. But other than that, no, I had a pretty good week.
Chris, what did you watch that was terrible?
I watched Eurovision. I don't know the full title, but I watched Eurovision this week, and
The Will Ferrell one, you mean?
yeah,
Or-
the new one.
Yeah.
It was kind of like watching Eurovision, to be honest. It goes for so long, like just on, and there was lots of obviously singing, and some quite bad, some quite good. There was some funny parts in all, but it just wasn't very good in its entirety. I think you've watched it, Adam.
Yeah, I have watched it. Your review is fantastic. It's as long as actual Eurovision and about the same level of funny mixed with cringe.
Perfect, because I didn't have my review in front of me, so thanks for reading that.
Yeah, I agree. Not like I don't know. I don't think
I haven't watched it, but I just looked it up. 124 minutes. Now, I've got a bone to pick. Directors need to learn 90 minutes. That's all you ever need for a movie. You can make every movie 90 minutes.
Hell yes, I'm so on board with that.
If
I
you
agree.
go longer than 90 minutes, you have to be very special.
So I'm going to jump into my worst movie for the week, and I watched some shockers again, but the worst one, Kissing Booth 2. And I don't know why I put myself through this by myself in an apartment during lockdown. This is a 2 hours and 20-minute runtime.
No.
And I sat through the whole thing, and I thought it was ending. There was this Dance Dance Revolution scene, and I can't. And then it goes for another half an hour after that. I don't want to even talk about it. But
Can I just ask why you chose this particular movie? Like, was it the name that appealed to you, or like the
Was it the
runtime?
endless Netflix advertising of it?
Emily, I ask myself this every week when I watch these terrible movies, and honestly, I just wanted some nice comfort food. You know, like you just want a movie that's like a good time. This was not it, and I sat through the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that. I wish I had a better excuse.
No,
Yeah.
fair.
That was the same for me in Eurovision. I just wanted something light and easy to watch, and that certainly was.
All right, so now we're going to move on to the big topic, and thank you so much, Emily, for providing that jingle. That was sarcasm.
Oh, sorry.
So this week's topic was The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's 1990 movie with a budget.
1980?
Oh, sorry, 1980. I wrote 1980. I said 90. A novel written by Stephen King and as I said, directed by Stanley Kubrick. It had a budget of 19 million and a box office of 46.2 million. So it almost doubled its money, if not more. Has a runtime of 1 hour and 44 minutes. Josh, take it away.
This is one of the greatest films of all time. That's how we'll start this one off. But there is a couple of things that need to be mentioned before we jump into the movie itself. There was pretty terrible things that happened on the set of this film. Stanley Kubrick pretty much abused one of the actresses in the film, Shelley Duvall, who plays Wendy, to the point where she's never been the same. He made her shoot hundreds of takes of certain scenes and encouraged the rest of the cast to not treat her with respect. He'd call her a terrible actress on a daily basis. Just very terrible things. So because of that, I'm not wishing Stanley Kubrick a happy birthday for this weekend. But yeah, I think that always needs to be mentioned.
And it was
now-
also behind it is that he wanted like the terror that she was showing in some of the scenes to be real, didn't he? Wasn't that like part of his motive as a director? Like,
It was, but it got to the point where at the end of the day, you hire actors because they can act.
Yeah. Oh, I completely. I'm not saying like what you just right.
right.
I'm just trying to say like he was doing it because he's like, oh yeah,
Correct.
like let's
Yeah.
yeah,
But the fact that he only did it to one person as well.
yeah, it's bizarre. It's pretty awful.
Yeah, but anyway,
sorry,
apart from that,
just to quickly add on that. So, yeah, the cast. I didn't list the cast members. So, Shelley Duvall plays Wendy Torres. There's Jack Nicholson. Dan Lloyd is the kid, and I guess the other important one is Scatman Crothers as Dick.
oh, Dick.
Such a good name.
Yeah.
Not his the Scatman name.
Mm.
The other one's funny too, but yeah.
Sorry,
So
go
what
for
do
it,
we
Josh.
think? Oh, okay. So should we get into sort of a plot outline of The Shining?
Yep, sounds
Get
good.
that out of the way. So The Shining follows the Torrance family, consisting of Jack, Wendy, and Danny. The father, Jack, played by Jack Nicholson, gets a job as a out-of-season caretaker at the Overlook Hotel. So they're the only ones staying in the Overlook over the winter. As the plot progresses, Jack is a writer and he wants to get some writing done in his isolated time. Another isolation movie, as we mentioned while we were watching it. Over the course of the film, we find out that the Overlook is haunted by some former tenants there, some former workers there. And Jack Nicholson's Jack slowly goes mad and basically decides to try and off his whole family. And that's the basic plot outline, I would say.
So just a nice, cheery little movie for your weekend.
Absolutely heartfelt.
Yeah.
Yeah, after us all getting cabin fevers in our own houses during this situation. Yeah, okay. So, like, I'm just going to start out because this is the first time I've ever seen the film, and I know that the rest of you have all seen it. And I'm not a super big horror fan. I will say that, like, I didn't struggle with this film. Like, and I was dreading it. Like, I put it off till yesterday to watch this. And I want to be honest with you guys and say that I think that the Simpsons Halloween special ruins it a little bit for me. And then in addition to that, Ready Player One, that scene that I watched like a week and a half ago, also ruined it. So it took away like the shock value of the caretaker's wife and the bathroom with the mirror. That scene was totally ruined. The red rum. You know that in The Simpsons he goes no beer, and he wrote on the walls and he goes, yeah, no beer, no TV, make homo go something, go crazy. Don't mind if I do. Yeah. So like I will say like what I did like about it, like cinematically, or like visually wise, it was creepy. Like the Indian symbolism like throughout the Outlook Hotel, just like the 1980s aesthetic. Jack Nicholson's role, like I don't think like he's perfect.
Not Oscar worthy though. Not Oscar worthy.
I don't understand how. There's that scene where he's like walking after Wendy, and they're using that like steady cam footage where he slowly walks towards her the entire time, and she's walking backwards and he's walking towards her. Jack Nicholson is unnerving. That scene is phenomenal.
And just to mention, that's the scene that Stanley Kubrick made Shelley Duvall shoot 137 times, walking up those stairs with that baseball bat.
Really?
That's probably why she seems so terrified.
Yeah, like she look like you can tell that she like looks like just mentally exhausted. She's just done.
But that scene is. I think you said that. Oh, how did you describe it? It made you feel sick to your stomach, or something along those lines.
Yeah, possibly. I don't remember.
It's quite a performance from old Jack. Or young Jack, I should probably say.
Yeah, so I guess like yeah, I for what it's worth, like I actually enjoyed the movie. I would say like it's unsettling. The kid does a great job. I think that the most unsettling bit of the whole movie was definitely, I don't know, that kid freaked me out.
Are you kidding? Danny is the
Who,
best.
Danny?
Yeah, Danny.
Oh, Danny.
Oh.
Nah,
love
when he does that like voice and the finger, no, kill the kid.
Oh,
Oh, we're gonna have some
That's
issues
awful.
soon. There's two kids in horror movies you don't talk shit about. Danny from The Shining and Andy from Child's Play.
yep.
So you're about to step over a line that should not be stepped over.
So I guess just sort of like doing some more like analysis into the film. Like there's like obviously the Alec Hotel is haunted and the spirits are I guess like going into spoilers. The premise is that the hotel has like lots of recurring themes and like there's the spirits that keep like, I don't know, keep coming back every time a family's isolated.
Yeah.
Like, did you guys read into like the picture at the end? Like that's obviously like the twist that they say where you see Jack Nicholson in a photo from 1927.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess like
And it goes into how he's always been the caretaker, I believe one of the characters states.
yeah, absolutely. And like Charles Grady was one of them. Yeah, look, it was great. Like I like just reading through like extra directors like commentary and stuff like that. Kubrick was inspired to use like lots of mirrors, symmetry, and like obviously the maze to give it like a labyrinth feel. Really sort of positioning the movie with lots of I guess cycles to try and like to show that this is something that happens over and over and over again. I did have some fun facts as well, which I don't know if they're as fun now that I know that about Wendy. So Jack Nicholson apparently only ate cheese sandwiches for 2 weeks prior to filming. And apparently it is known that Jack Nicholson hates cheese sandwiches. This was a way for him to get really angry during the filming. I don't know how accurate that is.
That's really funny if it's true. He doesn't like a cheese sandwich as well. Like, what just?
But is it just plain cheese? Because, I mean, there are better sandwiches than just plain cheese.
Oh, like there's better sandwiches, but like it's not the worst thing you could be eating. Like it's bread and cheese, which are two of my favorite things. So
That's true. I probably shouldn't complain about bread and cheese.
yeah.
2 weeks of it though would be, you'd definitely be over it by 2 weeks, surely.
That's what I reckon.
Well,
I'd be probably pretty. No, I feel like I could deal with cheese sandwiches for 2 weeks. Anyway,
On the subject of,
Kind of cheese sandwich? Like, it's sometimes grilled, sometimes on a roll,
Or grilled cheese.
I'll be honest with you guys. This came from BuzzFeed, so I don't know how accurate this is. Another fun fact was there were 900 tons of salt and crushed styrofoam used for the maze scene.
Oh, okay.
This is probably my favorite fact. It's one of the first 3 films to ever use a Steadicam. So like a handheld cam where they follow you through the scene. So like the maze scene, that scene with Wendy DeBale, all of that was all filmed on a Steadicam.
Do you know what the other ones were?
No. I read them, but I could not tell you the names. And then this movie has totally been remastered in 4K. So they took the original films, or the film footage on the 35mm and reprocessed it and scanned it. And you can now watch it in 4K. So everything that we were watching through that Netflix stream was probably compressed 4K footage.
Nice.
Any other thoughts on the movie?
Plenty.
I guess it's probably important for us to mention. So, Josh, Kris, and I all gave this film 5 stars. What did you give it, Adam?
I gave it a 3.5.
Oof.
And
3.5.
And you know, the reason I'm giving it a 3.5 is the plot was very much spoiled for me. I didn't feel like I also.
But is that the movie's fault? You know,
Also,
like, is it the Shining's fault that like it was that good that everyone's decided to like?
But was it that good?
Yes, it was.
Oof.
Okay.
Let me jump in here.
All right. I like that.
And let me just say that a good friend of the program, Reese Andrews, also watched this movie with us for the first time, had the plot spoiled by everything you said, also gave it a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Because he can see cinematic perfection in action, I think. There is
Let's not attack the host.
No.
Let's calm down.
sometimes it's needed. You can't give The Shining below a 4 unless you're a 1980s
But like,
film
all
critic.
right. So sorry. All right. I also don't think the execution of the plot was great. So, and I just. I'm sorry. You keep talking. Let me think about what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yes,
So-
please tell us how it wasn't great, Adam. Please do.
I will.
And,
Just give me a
and
moment.
while you do that, I'll jump in and tell you all the reasons why it is great. So everything I talked about Stanley Kubrick before has nothing to do with his talent, because there are few directors who have ever lived who could paint a picture, like a visual picture, quite like Stanley Kubrick. And to couple the perfect direction of this film, that soundtrack is the creepiest thing I've heard in my entire life. There are scenes where there is literally nothing happening and tension is at 10,000%.
Like when they're driving up the hill before anything has even happened and they're just talking in the car and it's just like, why is this so tense?
Or when Jack Nicholson's typing away at the typewriter and Wendy's walking towards him and it's got the building, I think
Yep.
it's keys, and you're just like, what is going to happen? And then we're just into a conversation.
Yep.
It was definitely very suspenseful with the music, and also I think I don't know for you guys if which movie you watched first, whether you watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest first or watched this. If you watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it kind of looked like he was already mad from the start, just from the sort of crossover between the movies. I don't know if you guys kind of felt that a little bit.
As a kid, I'd see them the other way around, but I'd probably seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest closer to this feeling. And he puts in a similar performance. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I'd seen that before I saw The Shining, so I think that like he already looks a little bit crazy even when they first arrived to the hotel. Was my sort of take on it with Jack's role.
It's hard not to look crazy with those eyebrows, though.
Okay,
I might help.
All right. So,
Adam,
look,
do we know why this movie sucks yet?
like it's funny because I'm trying to put it into words, and like the more and more I think about it, I'm like, oh, it's actually a pretty good movie. But I will say that like I think the reason it's very suspenseful. I will say that it's phenomenally suspenseful, and I guess that's the horror aspect of the film. I don't think that it's particularly like terrifying, other than like Jack Nicholson is super unhinged. I think that the thing that I dislike the most about the film is the Shining aspect, the one where like the kid can talk to Scatman on the other side of the world, and I guess like the whole Outlook Hotel has that supernatural factor, so like it all just sort of works together. I don't know. I think that the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I did really enjoy it. But for some reason, like, I don't know. I just like, and the thing is, like, I can't even tell you a good horror movie that like I've really loved. Do you know what? I think what I noticed the most is how many movies this has inspired, or how many like entertainment platforms this has inspired. And like, do you know what I kept coming back to? Was when we played through Until Dawn.
Yeah.
That whole like the hotel or the location is haunted, and there's like all these different influences on like what's happening on the mountain. I don't know. I think that the more and more I thought about it, you're right. It's a good movie. I don't know if it's a 5.
But you're willing to admit that it's probably not a 3.5?
Yeah, you're right. We'll shift it to a 4.
I'm happy to jump in for a little bit of support for you, Adam. I was trying to get in, but I think my line's sort of cutting in and out a little. With the premonitions bit, I do have one slight little problem with the plot. and it's with how Dick Halloran has the Shining as well as Danny the boy, Danny the kid, sorry. And when he's obviously got some premonitions that something bad is happening at the Overlook Hotel, so then he decides to make a massive trip to get there. You know, like all the roads are like iced over, but he still manages to get out there. Takes a flight and everything. So he's been able to do premonitions about something bad happening there, but he's got no sense of his impending death. And also, on top of that, I noticed that he has this shining ability, which might not be as strong as Danny's shining ability, but he makes no attempt to try to use that ability to talk to him. He just walks into the hotel and's like, hello, hello, when he's worried that something's happening. So that's my little fault on the movie. I don't know whether others will agree, but that was my fault, that the Shining was a big part of it, but then it never got used at that end scene. I thought maybe that could have been, or towards the end, it maybe could have been done a little bit better. Thoughts?
So recently I read Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining.
Oh, sorry, I'll butt in there. Sorry, Josh. With the Stephen King's actual book, this is not what occurs in it. So Kubrick changed this. So in the actual book, Dick Halloran doesn't die.
Yes.
So this is a Kubrick change.
I was also going to mention that Stephen King hates this movie. Absolutely cannot stand The Shining.
Yeah.
But I also watched Doctor Sleep, which I believe they made into a sequel
Just
of
recently.
Kubrick's film. Yeah.
Yep.
And it explores The Shining a lot more, and I can't quite remember how much, but I think it might give a more encapsulated version of the story if we watch both of them. So that's a little suggestion for down the line.
I liked Doctor Sleep, so I'd be happy to do a rewatch.
Yeah, I will say so. Yeah, Stephen King didn't like the film. Apparently, it was focusing a lot more on Jack Nicholson being an alcoholic and that side of, I guess, the story, and him becoming unhinged because of alcoholism. So just putting that aside, the more and more I think about it, the more and more like cinematically, I'm like, oh, this is great. The toilet scene, that toilet. I want to go to a bar that has a toilet like that. That red is so sweet. Like, I don't know, that was really cool. Like all the bathrooms, like all the different parts of the hotel have a really good feel to them.
The way that bathroom shot's framed as well when it first comes in. Oh,
yeah,
perfect.
Yep. Anyways, those are my thoughts on The Shining. I like, the thing is, I recommend you see it.
And don't be like critics in 1980 who said this movie sucked almost across the board. It's got nominated for no Oscars, and it won 2 Razzies, including Worst Director. Let's just...
Shocks me.
Yeah, no, like definitely watch it. I definitely think it's a good film. I don't think that... Like, I think that you still have to watch it if you have seen all of the references. And, like, it's really become, like, a pop culture, like, horror film to watch. So, yeah. With that, I think that ends the big topic for the week. Now, what do you guys want to watch next week? Any ideas? And we didn't have a discussion about this beforehand.
We had a few last week, so should we just pick from one of those?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, what was the other option?
It was Goodfellas or Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. I wasn't obviously in this conversation, so I'm all over Back to the Future.
Well, I was going to say Goodfellas.
I watched Goodfellas not that long ago, so that's why I was keen on Back to the Future. But it can be that one.
All right, no, let's do Back to the Future then, because I haven't seen Back to the Future in a while.
Why do we have both? Yeah, that's a good point. We could do Goodfellas in a later week.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll do Back to the Future.
Back to the Future it is. All
and
right.
you can see how slightly inferior it is to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh, that's going to be interesting. Oh, yeah, okay. Yep, super down for this now. Sounds great. Awesome. All right, so thank you so much for listening to episode 3 of Films Cool, this July 29th. I'm Adam. That was where you guys were supposed to jump in and go, I'm Josh,
Oh.
I'm Emily. But we have Josh, we have Emily, we have Kris. And thanks so much. And we will see you again next Wednesday. Thanks, guys.
See yous.
See ya.
Bye.